What if a single, precisely executed strike could cripple the heart of an adversary's war machine? On the 5th of September, 2025, at precisely 2 o'clock hours, a Russian engineer diligently monitoring pressure gauges at the Ryazan refinery remained blissfully unaware. For 3 long months, Ukrainian strategists had meticulously planned the destruction of his very plant. In mere moments, that multi-billion-dollar strategic asset was destined to become the most searing beacon in the Russian night. And this wasn't merely a figure of speech, for this facility was more than just a refinery. It served as the primary fueling station for the entire Moscow military district, providing the indispensable fuel for tanks threatening Europe, powering the nation's capital, and funneling billions in hard currency directly into the Kremlin's war chest. For Ukraine, rendering this critical facility inoperable represented far more than a symbolic victory. It promised a direct chokehold on Russia's capacity to wage war, elevating it to a target of almost unimaginable strategic significance. The linchpin of this audacious attack was a Sokol 300, a 440-pound mothership drone that had been screaming towards Ryazan at 150 miles per hour, expertly hugging the terrain at a perilously low 130 feet. Strapped securely to its airframe were 10 custom-built FPV attack drones, each one armed with a potent 4.4-pound shaped charge warhead. The entire operation stood as a masterclass in exploiting Russia's over-reliance on heavy, static defenses against nimble, smaller threats. The cold, hard math of the operation should be causing Russian generals sleepless nights. The Sokol 300 drone carried an approximate cost of $100,000, while the 10 FPV drones it transported cost a mere $5,000 apiece. Their ultimate target, the Yelu AVT-6 cracking unit, a single piece of infrastructure valued at $500 million within a refinery estimated to be worth $7 billion. Ukrainian intelligence had invested months identifying this single, critical point of failure. This wasn't merely warfare. It was the most brutal corporate takeover in history, and the stock was poised for a monumental crash. But the true architect of this impending catastrophe remained hidden in the shadows, meticulous in their preparation. At 15 minutes past midnight, long before the target was even a distant glimmer, the Sokol 300 had flawlessly lifted off from a concealed field deep within Sumy Oblast. For the subsequent 90 minutes, its flight represented a masterclass in applied physics. By hugging the terrain at 130 feet, it ingeniously utilized the very curvature of the Earth as its primary shield against Russia's notoriously expensive Nebo-M and Big Bird radars. This was no simple, pre-programmed straight line. Instead, it was a winding, treacherous path, painstakingly paved by 3 months of relentless intelligence gathering. While U.S. satellite data provided the static map, Ukrainian Lelika 100 Scout drones delivered real-time traffic reports, painting a precise, invisible highway through the intricate gaps in Russian air defense. This entire sophisticated operation was born from 4 weeks of meticulous planning that had pinpointed the refinery's undeniable Achilles heel. The choice of the Sokol mothership was not for ostentatious display. It was a cold, hard calculation of risk versus reward. Rather than launching dozens of long-range drones that could be picked off one by one, the decision was made to send one larger, stealthier aircraft to deliver the knockout punch from close range. It was akin to the profound difference between an archer firing a volley of arrows from a mile away and a hunter who quietly stalks his prey, then delivers a precise, true-wing blow exactly where it needs to go. Yet, this elaborate dance of deception was far from over. The true brilliance lay in a single, audacious detail. And one of those FPVs was uniquely different. Instead of a conventional warhead, it carried a compact, custom-built jamming pod. Its solitary purpose was to forge a 10-second window of pure electronic chaos, designed to blind the S-400's primary radar at the most critical juncture. It was the electronic equivalent of throwing sand directly into the goalie's eyes just moments before taking the penalty kick. At 58 minutes past 1 o'clock hours, precisely 12 miles from the refinery, the Sokol executed its primary purpose. It gracefully released its 10-drone payload and then banked hard, beginning its journey back towards home. That 12-mile mark was no arbitrary guess. It was a calculated kill zone. This distance placed the release point just outside the maximum effective engagement range of the Pantsir-S1 air defense systems, vigorously protecting the facility. What unfolded next would redefine the very nature of modern warfare, pitting ingenuity against sheer brute force. Now, the Russians had not entrusted their $7 billion asset to a simple chain-link fence and a sleepy security guard. This was a billion-dollar fortress, constructed with the kind of arrogant overconfidence that only petrodollars could purchase. The outer wall was comprised of the formidable S-400 Triumph system, whose Big Bird and Nebo-M radars were specifically designed to track strategic bombers and ballistic missiles from 250 miles away. It was akin to purchasing a professional telescope solely to search for alien invasions, while completely disregarding the termites devouring the very foundations of your own home. Then there was the electronic moat, the Krasuka 4. This was no subtle jammer. It was a $200 million brute, capable of blanketing an area of 150 miles in every direction with such an overwhelming torrent of raw radio frequency noise that it could induce a satellite migraine. If anything, by some miracle, managed to penetrate that electronic hurricane, 12 Pantsir-S1 complexes formed the inner, formidable wall. Each one represented a $15 million self-contained death machine, bristling with missiles and 30mm cannons specifically engineered to shred anything that dared to get too close. Add to this two Mi-28 Havoc attack helicopters on permanent standby and Spetsnaz patrols, so bored they were likely playing cards, and you had the most expensive security system oil money could possibly procure. Within this seemingly impenetrable fortress, a single operator, Sergeant Sergei, held a false sense of security, unaware of the impending storm. Inside a climate-controlled command vehicle, an operator named Sergei hadn't spilled his tea in a year. On his screen, the airspace appeared impeccably clean. He had been meticulously trained to believe that nothing could possibly touch this facility. He observed reports of Ukrainian drone strikes on the front lines and scoffed dismissively, muttering children's toys to his colleague. He harbored no idea that 10 of those very toys were now deep inside his designated kill zone, and they were about to deliver a brutal lesson. In modern warfare, it is not the cost of your weapon that ultimately counts, but the intelligence and ingenuity of the person wielding it. At 59 minutes past 1 o'clock, 2 of the 10 FPV drones abruptly broke from the main pack and punched their throttles, climbing aggressively into the night sky. Their mission was not to strike a target, but to be painted by Russian radar. On the S-400's gravestone display, 2 bright blips suddenly materialized out of the ground clutter. The system performed precisely as its $500 million price tag promised. It acquired, tracked, and locked on with ruthless, unyielding efficiency. The stage was set for a moment of electronic warfare that few had ever witnessed, a delicate balance of power poised to tip. That was the critical trigger. As the S-400 system focused its powerful radar on the 2 decoys, the designated jammer drone, one of the 8 still flying low and undetected, unleashed a focused, 10-second blast of high-power microwave energy aimed directly at the gravestone's receiver. It was the electronic equivalent of someone pointing a high-beam flashlight directly into your eyes when you're desperately trying to find your keys in the dark. You are not entirely blind, but you cannot discern anything that truly matters. In that precise, engineered window of chaos, the 7 remaining attack drones slipped through the gap, completely undetected. The Krasuka 4 had effectively rendered GPS completely useless. But these drones did not require it. They were navigating with remarkable precision using solid-state gyros and accelerometers that meticulously tracked every minute change in velocity and direction. It was a sophisticated attack that would undoubtedly disrupt most consumer drones, but these were not mere hobby shop gadgets. You could jam GPS, but you could not, by any means, fool inertial navigation. The intricate electronic chess match was over. Ukraine had just checkmated a billion-dollar defense system with a strategically brilliant 10-second bluff. The true test of resilience, however, was still to come, as the first tangible blow landed with devastating force. At 2 o'clock hours, the first FPV drone impacted. Its initial target was not the YLU AVT-6. Not yet. It was a crucial secondary pipe rack. The 4.5-pound shaped charge detonated, its copper liner forming a high-velocity jet traveling at 25,000 feet per second. It didn't merely explode. It vaporized a precisely engineered hole through just over half an inch of steel at over 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, instantly igniting the volatile fuel within. But this initial success immediately created an unforeseen problem. A towering column of thick, black, unburnt hydrocarbons billowed into the sky, completely blinding the optical cameras of the drones following closely behind it. The explosion served as the much-needed slap in the face the Russians required. Suddenly, the entire electronic landscape underwent a dramatic shift. The Krasuka force surged to life, pumping out enough raw radio frequency energy to disrupt every civilian cell phone from that location to the next oblast. Two Mi-28 Havoc gunships rapidly cooled up, their pilots ordered to hunt for any electromagnetic signatures they could possibly find. The Russian Ministry of Defense would later claim that 92 drones were shot down across the vast country, with 8 of them intercepted specifically at Ryazan. But the grim reality on the ground was far more chaotic and disorienting. The Russian operators intensified their electronic assault, moving beyond simple GPS jamming to sophisticated GPS spoofing, sending out false satellite signals meticulously designed to trick the Ukrainian drones into believing they were somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. It was a highly sophisticated attack that would undoubtedly disrupt most commercial systems, but again, these were not mere toy drones. Inside each custom FPV, precision solid-state gyros detected the glaring discrepancy between the false GPS data and its actual physical movement. The inertial measurement units did not require satellites. They tracked every change in velocity and direction using the fundamental, unyielding laws of physics. You could spoof a satellite, but you could not lie to Newton's laws of motion. Amidst this escalating pandemonium, the Ukrainian operators made a decision that defied all conventional logic, turning impending failure into a weapon. Just then, shrapnel from a near miss by a Pantsir missile savagely shredded the propellers of the third drone. It began to tumble violently, crippled, yet not entirely destroyed. The operator, watching with laser-like focus through his crystal-clear FPV feed, made a split-second decision that was equal parts brilliant and utterly insane. Instead of allowing the drone to crash uselessly, he masterfully guided its burning wreckage directly into a burgeoning pool of spilled fuel from the first explosion, effectively using the drone itself as an incendiary device to complete the job. A menacing river of fire now began to snake its way inexorably toward the refinery's core, a self-inflicted wound that Russia had never anticipated. The chess match was irrevocably over. This was now merely a desperate knife fight in a burning room. While the 10 custom FPVs began their suicidal dive into the very heart of the Russian defense network, the Sokol 300 mothership that had carried them was already banking hard for home. Its primary mission was complete. Now, its only remaining task was to vanish without a trace. 80 miles away, it would execute its final command, a pre-programmed dive into a dense, unpopulated forest, ensuring that its advanced technology would never be recovered by the enemy. But for its children, the real fight had only just begun. As the mothership vanished, its children continued their desperate fight, proving that even the most formidable defenses could be outmaneuvered. The Russian defense, though initially fooled, was not entirely useless. It was simply slow to react. The 10-second jamming window abruptly closed, and the S-400 operator, his screen finally clear again, swiftly fired on the 2 decoy drones. 257 E-6 missiles screamed into the night sky, and the first 2 Ukrainian drones disintegrated in fiery bursts. On the Russian command net, it was a moment of profound relief. 2 kills. The operator confidently reported, believing the immediate threat was over. He was tragically mistaken. The 7 attack drones were now deep inside the perimeter, and the 12 Pantsir-S1 units suddenly awoke, their operators in a state of pure, unadulterated panic, switching to manual engagement. They began filling the sky with a literal wall of steel. It was like attempting to hit a hummingbird with a fire hose. Inefficient, perhaps, but if you spray enough water, you are eventually going to get it wet. A proximity fuse detonated perilously close to the 3rd drone, shredding it with a deadly shower of tungsten fragments. A burst of cannon fire from a different Pantsir caught the fourth. The fifth, battling the ferocious thermal updrafts from the initial fire, lost control and slammed into the ground below. An Mi-28 Havoc gunship, its optics finally cutting through the obscuring smoke, spotted and obliterated the sixth drone. The jammer drone, its mission gloriously complete, was caught and destroyed. A seventh attacker was finally taken out by another Pantsir missile. 10 drones had entered. 8 were now twisted, burning scraps scattered across the Ryazan countryside. The Russian defense had undoubtedly cost Ukraine dearly. But the ultimate cost for Russia was about to become infinitely higher because 2 had gotten through. Through the hell's cape of fire, thick smoke, and shrapnel, 2 FPV drones emerged like vengeful spirits. Their operators had cunningly used the chaos, the very destruction of their comrades, as an unforeseen shield. The Pantsirs, having expended their ready-to-fire missiles in a panicked, desperate volley, were now in the critical middle of their reload cycles. There was a deadly, agonizing 15-second lull in the defensive fire. But despite the overwhelming firepower, the unthinkable had happened. 2 drones remained, poised to deliver the final, catastrophic blows. On the screens of the 2 remaining Ukrainian operators, the grand prize loomed large. The massive YLU AVT-6 cracking unit and its adjacent crude oil storage tank. There were no more decoys, no more elaborate tricks, just 2 drones, 2 operators, and a $7 billion target awaiting its final, brutal judgment. The world held its breath, unaware of the devastating conclusion just moments away. The Ukrainian operators did not have the burden of choice. They had 2 drones. 2 final, unwavering commands were transmitted. Both FPVs pushed their throttles to the absolute maximum and began their terminal, unyielding dives. At 3 minutes past 2 o'clock hours, the first FPV impacted the YLU AVT-6. The 4.5-pound shaped charge did not merely explode. It performed physics-based surgery. Its copper liner inverted and stretched into a molten jet, moving at an incredible 25,000 feet per second, punching clean through the unit's robust steel housing and injecting over 5,000 degree Fahrenheit plasma directly into the intricate network of pipes and pressure vessels. It was akin to firing a bolt of lightning into a city's main power grid. The system didn't just break, it cooked itself from the inside out. Exactly 1.3 seconds later, the second drone struck the adjacent storage tank. This explosion was distinctly different. The shaped charge cleanly punctured the thick steel wall. But the true weapon, in this instance, was the tens of thousands of tons of crude oil contained within. The volatile fuel ignited instantly from the immense heat and pressure, shattering the tank's 20-millimeter steel walls like fragile glass. It was comparable to shaking a can of soda vigorously for 5 minutes and then shooting it with a rifle. The result was a colossal fireball that NASA satellites would register from distant orbit. The repercussions of these 2 precise strikes rippled through the entire nation, proving that true power lay not in might, but in ingenuity. The strategic fallout was immediate and catastrophic for Russia. The wholesale destruction of the YLU AVT-6 and the subsequent uncontrollable fires crippled 50% of the Ryazan refinery's overall output. This single, devastating strike contributed to a 17% drop in Russia's entire national refining capacity. Within a mere few weeks, Russia, a self-proclaimed energy superpower, was humiliatingly forced to import gasoline from Belarus, while prices at their own domestic pumps spiked by a staggering 54%. The 2 drones that successfully got through, a combined investment of perhaps $10,000, inflicted billions in direct and indirect damages. Not even the most astute Wall Street hedge fund could possibly deliver a return on investment of such a magnitude. Moscow's response was predictably brutish and unimaginative. They swiftly deployed 5 more Pantsir-S1 systems and another pair of Mi-28 helicopters to Ryazan. They reinforced the very systems that had just spectacularly failed. It was like installing a taller fence to keep out birds after your entire house had just been destroyed by a devastating flood. In the end, Ukraine unequivocally proved a fundamental lesson of modern warfare, a lesson that their ancestors understood intimately. It's not about how big your club is. It's about knowing precisely where to strike. You do not always need a billion-dollar hammer to achieve victory. Sometimes, all you truly need is a very smart, very cheap, and very sharp nail.